A surveillance camera captures a young woman enter an elevator. She presses a button, waits, but then exits before the doors can close. She peeks down the hall as if expecting someone or something to catch her. She re-enters, hides in the corner, then leaves. This time, she stops and stares off frame down the hall. It appears she's talking to something as she begins waving her hands in the air and wringing them. This erratic and frightening display continues until the young woman exits one last time and disappears out of frame. The doors close, and the empty elevator begins its trip down without her. This was Elisa Lam. Her dead body would be discovered 19 days later in that hotel's rooftop water tank. To this day, online sleuths don't believe in the authorities' final conclusions on Lam's death. They continue to speculate as to what happened in her final hours. Could she have been running from someone? Perhaps this was the result of years of mental illness. Or maybe it had something to do with her stay at a hotel, infamously known for murder and violence. We'll dive into the unanswered questions and theories in this bizarre and tragic mystery. Join us for another Bad Things true crime case. This is what most likely happened to Elisa Lam. Born Lam Ho Yi in Canada, she was more popularly known as Elisa Lam by classmates at the University of British Columbia. She was a talented writer and passionate about fashion. She maintained a popular blog and had ambitions to attend graduate school. She maintained close contact with her family almost every day until the end of her life. However, not everything in Lam's life was easy. Despite her successes as a young college student, she also dealt with bipolar disorder and depression. She was prescribed a number of medications. However, she was known to stop taking them at times. Many believe this mental illness was a leading cause in the circumstances around her death. That said, when 21-year-old Lam arrived in Los Angeles on January 27, 2013, it seems she was unaware of the history of the hostel she had booked, nor the seedy neighborhood she'd be staying in. Not far from Skid Row, the Cecil Hotel is no stranger to violence and murder. The downtown Los Angeles hotel opened almost 100 years ago as a budget option for travelers. The hotel is a rundown and dark place. Still, it remains open and was the last place Lam would stay before her demise. Some believe that Lam's death was caused by supernatural or other evil forces. Of course, authorities did not come to the same conclusion. However, they did find that Lam's stay at the hotel wasn't without incident. Initially, Lam had been assigned to a shared room, but was switched after her new roommates claimed she was acting strangely. They claimed Lam would refuse to let them enter without providing a password. Also, Lam had gone to a taping of The Conan Show in Burbank, but was removed from the premises after behaving erratically. Little is publicly known about what happened, but many believe this was a sign of her declining mental health. However, other witnesses beg to differ. The manager for the Last Bookstore, another downtown LA establishment, encountered Lam days prior and says she was very outgoing, very lively, very friendly. Not only that, but Lam was still calling her parents regularly during her trip to LA and even posting photos on Facebook and her blog about her activities. There were few to no signs of distress on social media. However, on February 1st, the routine calls from Lam to her parents stopped. Her parents grew concerned and immediately contacted the Los Angeles Police Department. Shortly after, they flew to LA to assist in the search. Authorities were stumped and found little to no signs of her. Her belongings were still in her room. All they had was the disturbing and bizarre elevator surveillance video of Lam. On February 6th, LAPD's Homicide Division held a press conference appealing for the public's help. They believed her disappearance was suspicious and may suggest foul play. Still, no solid clues came. On the 13th, the LAPD took their appeal a step further by releasing the surveillance video. Up to this point, the case had not garnered too much public attention. However, that video would change everything. The strange, creepy footage was viewed by millions, and her case became highly publicized. Many online sleuths immediately came to the conclusion that Lam must have been under some kind of illegal substance. However, this would be later ruled out as forensic scientists found no signs of drugs in her system aside from trace amounts from her prescription medication. These small amounts suggest that Lam had likely stopped taking her medication during the trip. Others believe the episode was a psychotic break, but at the time this video was initially released, Lam had still not been found, nor was there much info on her mental health history. Towards the end of February, guests at the Cecil Hotel began to complain of foul-tasting water and low pressure coming from the taps and showers. On the 21st, the hotel sent a maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, to investigate the problem. He discovered Lam within one of the 4 1,000-gallon water tanks. The tank was only 3/4 full. Lam was completely naked. Her clothes were near her body. A pair of shorts, a t-shirt, black underwear, sandals, and a red American Apparel hoodie. News reports immediately speculated it was Lam, though the LAPD would wait for the coroner to confirm. This was a tragic end to Lam's case. However, there was still little to no resolution as to what actually happened to her. There were no cameras on the roof. Not only that, the doors leading to the roof were alarmed and locked, so it would have been impossible for Lam to access the tanks there. The only way up would be through the hotel's fire escape. However, a canine unit found no scent trail leading out of her room's window, which connected to the fire escape. Aside from accessing the roof, many have also questioned how she could have possibly gotten into the tanks in the first place. All 4 tanks are 4 by 8 feet and propped up on concrete blocks. Even hotel workers would prop a ladder against it to access the tanks. The employee who found her body confirmed the lid to the tank was open at the time. From here, there are a number of varying theories as to what actually happened to Lam. However, many believe the global phenomenon of the video and the dark history of the Cecil Hotel has clouded many people's judgment. After extensive analysis of her body and other aspects of the case, police ruled it was an accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder being a significant factor. When Lam was younger, her parents reported there was one incident in which she had not taken her medication. She had an episode and saw hallucinations and even hid under the bed for safety. Clearly, her mental illness was severe enough to cause these intense episodes. Out of all the theories, it seems most likely Lam believed she was being chased or was in danger. In an attempt to save herself, she hid in the water tank but tragically drowned. While only Lam herself would know what truly happened on January 31st, 2013, we can speculate this was the most likely cause of death based on the facts of the case and logic. Lam's trip to Los Angeles was meant to be a getaway. On her blog, she wrote of how it was her tour of the West. Her performance in school had been declining because of her bipolar disorder and depression. In her blogs, she often wrote of feeling lost. Of course, this isn't an uncommon feeling amongst early 20-year-olds. However, it was likely compounded by her struggles with mental illness. The epigraph for her blog was a quote by novelist Chuck Palahniuk. He wrote, "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life." Sadly, while many want to imagine what Lam saw outside the elevator, we'll never truly understand how she was feeling. As of March 2023, Elisa Lam would be 31 years old and coming up on a birthday in April. Her family and friends miss her to this day.